It's a pleasure to have you here. After so many times you've been to Mexico teaching photo reading, problem solving, and super learning. So here I have the first question for you, for our audience. Uh, Paul, from your experience in photo reading and super learning, what is the biggest challenge that leaders have when they try to learn faster and at a deeper level? And how can we reprogram that from your point of view?
Well, thank you very much. It's a delight to be here with you and your audience. And when we talk about the human brain, we need to understand that the brain is a self-maximizing memory storage system. And what it has a tendency to do is it cuts out a lot of irrelevant information, and it leaves you with a very small amount of what we would normally take in. Secondly, the human brain consumes a tremendous amount of energy, so it naturally wants to conserve energy. So what happens for most executives when they learn something new is they will fall back on their old habits. Old habits tend to have a strong hold on us, and to establish a new habit, we need to begin as a beginner. We need to have an open mind and an open heart and an open will to try something new that can make a big difference. Now, when we're trying to implement a new solution, what we're looking for is small, concrete indicators of success in the direction of our ideal end result. Very often, we don't see a massive change overnight. We see indicators of progress. And as a learner, as someone who is retraining their brain for new patterns and new habits, that's key. To stay with it, recognize what it is you're attempting to create, and that's where the power of change really begins to occur.
Thank you so much. So much wisdom in so few words, but I know it's been a lot of research behind all this wisdom you're sharing with us. The second question, Paul, there's a big audience of top leaders in Mexico and around the world who have to take decisions at a top level. How can we train our mind to make these decisions in a faster and more accurate way in an environment of uncertainty without falling into stress and being overloaded by all this cognitive super loading information?
Well, the human brain is perfectly capable of navigating uncertainty. That's what we're built for. So bringing the brain and the mind back to what it can do is partly being able to let go of old patterns of how we do things and begin initializing new patterns. For example, when the COVID pandemic occurred globally, there were many businesses that succeeded and did very well during that time, not because they were involved in practices that they were used to, but because they were able to pivot rapidly to do what was needed to achieve what they desired. And those studied by Harvard Business Review were documented. What were the key characteristics that helped these executives adjust and adapt to changing circumstances. What we know absolutely is we cannot predict and we cannot control the future. But what the brain is best at is being able to sense and respond. So when you think of the difference between predict and control and sense and respond, then what you understand is the more present, the more aware, the more able you are to gather information, the more able you will be to effectively solve the problems that are in front of us. If you could think about the human brain under duress, under cognitive stress, there are very important things that happen. It's called down regulation. The brain down regulates into a survival mode. The most ancient part of the brain, called the reptiliano, the reptilian brain, under stress will cause you to freeze, to just stop and be unable to do anything. The middle part of the brain, called the limbic system, when it's under stress, it will tend to fight or flee, to run away. And when the neocortex, the most advanced part of the brain, is under stress, we go into confusion. So think about the amazing sensory systems that we have. And when it's under stress, our attention, our perception, our thinking and decision-making, our memory, and our ability to respond all collapse. So we need to learn to upregulate the brain by bringing the old brain into a place of safety, to know that right now you're safe. The middle part of the brain, to know that it belongs, that you're okay. And the advanced part of the brain needs to know that you are worthy. You will be able to figure this out. Now, as you upregulate the brain in this way with very simple practices of relaxed awareness, then you bring online what's called the higher brain functions of the prefrontal cortex of the brain, which can see the big picture. It can look into the future, and it can actually practice possibilities well in advance. Great thinkers from our past, like Nikola Tesla, Einstein, Edison, these people all had the capacity to use different parts of the brain. If you think about Apple, what was one of the main phrases that they used? Think differently. So rather than falling back in old patterns of problem solving, we need to solve the way we solve problems. And that's called a paradigm shift. It's a shift in levels of thinking.
Beautiful. It's so beautiful. You have been considered as one of the masterminds in the world nowadays, compared to Stephen Covey, Stephen Hawkins. How would you define entering in this flow of neuroscience in the brain? What would you recommend us to do?
Well, there is something called the flow state. And this is a very important place where all of us are gaining access to our optimal performance, our optimal neurological performance, our optimal physical and emotional performance and resilience, our capacity to do hard things. There was an author 2 years ago, wrote a book called The Art of Impossible, Stephen Kotler, and he's been researching this idea of flow for many years. He developed a group called the Flow Collective. So this is all very well documented, and it's all pretty easy to learn. The most important thing is we have to drive fear and stress out. If you come back to this idea I shared earlier of sensing and responding, now both hemispheres of the brain are going to work effectively. The left hemisphere, which is more rational in its problem-solving approach, and the right hemisphere, which is more creative in its problem-solving approach, are going to be working together most effectively. And this was based on studies that have been done on the human brain. Historically, our most creative thinkers were very disciplined, logical thinkers, and they knew when to let the imagination flow. And so it is this interaction between the two that creates our ideal state. Now, if you have a lot of worry and fear, and I've got to do this quickly, and what if people don't accept my ideas? That just shuts down this natural capacity for creative and innovative thinking. And it's going to be necessary to innovate for our future other ways of solving problems other than the problem-solving approaches that got us here. And here is a very important idea. Most of the solutions that we generate come from a problem-solving approach that put the problem here to begin with. It was called an unintended consequence. You solve this problem with this solution. Here's the problem, here's the solution. But that creates more of the same. And what we have to do is we have to go to a different logical level. And all of us are capable of doing that. We use both the conscious, rational mind, and we use the creative, other than conscious resources of mind. That's where our true genius resides. And there is genius in you. In every employee, in every manager, there is also genius within us. And it's a matter of liberating that genius. My proposition is that the purpose of education is the liberation of human genius.
So wonderful. And whenever I work in Mexico and communities and companies, etc., I just look at this human potential that hasn't been expanded. And maybe with people like yourself, we're going to be able to go to another level, to the next step of scaling globally, of evolving in our super learning techniques, adapting them to artificial intelligence, and having a wider impact in the world.
Most definitely. What I've been saying is that instead of thinking of it as artificial intelligence, think of it as augmented intelligence. If you use AI as a thinking partner to search large language models effectively and bring you insights, then your decision making, your ability to put together a synthesis of a new way forward will be enhanced. Don't use it to replace the native intelligence that's within you. Use it to serve you in getting access to the information you need to make the right decisions.
So lovely, wonderful. Yeah, and decision making is like expanding our consciousness for connecting our brain with our heart and the best of ourselves. So, Paul, it's been an honor. Thank you so much for your wisdom shared with us. So thank you very, very much.
You're very welcome. I look forward to working with you more.
Thank
Bye for now.
Thank you, Paul.